Chapter 1. The wind-swept castle. The Cornwall storm raged in the distance, hurling fierce crests of white foam against the sheer cliffs below the ancient Blackwood castle. The torrential rain poured down, blurring the boundary between the grey sky and the dark ocean, turning the entire southwestern coast of England into a desolate wilderness. The North Sea wind blew freezing cold, carrying a salty tang over the barren, grass-covered hills. The weather in this part of England was notorious for its sudden, violent shifts, and today it seemed determined to wash away all trace of life from the steep coastal cliffs. In the thick fog and bone-chilling cold of the late afternoon, a slender figure walked along the slippery, steep stone path leading to the grey stone fortress standing tall between heaven and earth. It was Victoria Audley, but at this moment she was only Clara Smith. Her thin wool cloak was soaked through, heavy and clinging to her shoulders, which shook with cold. She dared not turn her head to look at the road behind her. Bustling London with its grand townhouses, and the lavish Mayfair social season, were now but a painful memory. She was fleeing the ruthless match orchestrated by her paternal uncle, Lord Arthur Audley. Only 4 days ago, she had accidentally overheard Arthur plotting with a greedy, unscrupulous solicitor to strip her of her late father's entire inheritance. They planned to marry her off to Lord Stirling, an elderly widower notorious for his violence and cruelty in the north. He needed a new wife to bear heirs to his vast cold estates, and Arthur needed his money to pay off staggering gambling debts accumulated at the aristocratic clubs in London. The 3-day journey on the mail coach had been a nightmare for a lady raised in luxury. The carriage was cramped, damp, and jolted incessantly on the dirt roads riddled with potholes. Around her were coarse commoners who smelled of stale ale and damp wool. She had to conceal her face under an old bonnet, enduring the damp smell, the arguments, and the bone-chilling wind, whistling through the cracks of the wooden doors. The cold rain seeped through her thin leather boots, leaving her toes numb and aching. By the time she set foot in Cornwall, her entire body was aching and numb, but her resolve had never wavered. She would rather endure this hardship, or even freeze to death on the wayside, than be sold to the brutal Lord Stirling. That night, Victoria had made the boldest decision of her life. She slipped into her father's study, took the real will and the Audley family ring hidden away. She exchanged her splendid silk dress for a simple wool gown, wrapped herself in the old cloak, and escaped through the back door of the estate into the rainy night. She had sold her mother's only gold necklace to buy a third-class ticket on a carriage, bound for the remote northwestern coast, evading the prying eyes of high society. All she brought with her now was a small, worn leather valise, and a secret that could upend her life hidden at the very bottom of her luggage. Blackwood Castle loomed before her like a massive cold stone fortress, standing firm against the violent waves of Cornwall. It was the residence of Tristan Vance, the Duke of Blackwood. London society called him England's most feared duke with utmost trepidation and respect. It was rumored that he was a ruthless man, highly vigilant after political betrayals in London. He despised the hypocrisy of high society and chose to hide himself in this remote castle, refusing to participate in the shallow games of the ton. But to Clara at this moment, this isolated castle was the perfect sanctuary. The Bow Street runners hired by her uncle would not easily come to this wind-stormy land to hunt for a maid. Clara stood before the massive oak doors, taking a deep breath. She raised her cold hand and knocked firmly 3 times on the heavy iron ring. The knock echoed through the howling wind of the storm. A moment later, the heavy door slowly creaked open. Mrs. Gable, a stern middle-aged housekeeper with a crisp white apron and neatly pinned hair, appeared. She scrutinized Clara from head to toe, a young girl, soaked with simple luggage yet standing straight, lacking the submissive posture of a servant. "Who are you looking for?" Mrs. Gable's voice was as cold as the weather outside. "I have come to apply for the position of companion to the Dowager Duchess," Clara replied. Her voice rang clear, calm, and highly refined. Every syllable, every cadence of her pronunciation exuded a noble education that she could not entirely conceal, despite her simple clothes. Mrs. Gable narrowed her eyes with suspicion. Many girls from all over had come here to apply and left in tears after just a week of trial. The Dowager Duchess was notorious for being difficult, strict, and highly eccentric. "Come in," Mrs. Gable stepped aside. "But do not hope for too much. This house is not for the faint of heart." Clara stepped into the castle's great hall. The warmth from the massive fireplace washed over her face, carrying the scent of pine wood and warm beeswax. Mrs. Gable led her to a small room off the kitchen to warm herself and change into dry clothes prepared by the castle. Later, the housekeeper returned with an empty tea tray. The Duchess is in a foul mood. The previous companion was sacked this morning for making the tea poorly and spilling a drop on her silk gown. She has no tolerance for incompetence. Mrs. Gable looked straight into Clara's eyes. If you want this job, you must prepare and serve the tea yourself. Prove that you are more useful than the last one. Clara nodded slightly, her face betraying no anxiety. She walked to the kitchen table where tin tea canisters stood. Her slender fingers drifted over the teas naturally. She did not choose the usual strong black tea, which would easily make the already irritable Duchess lose sleep. She chose Earl Grey, adding a touch of dried lavender and a thin slice of dried orange. It was the tea recipe that calmed migraines and tension, which her father had once loved during his illness. Mrs. Gable stood silently watching, the way Clara held the kettle of boiling water, measured the tea leaves, and timed the steeping. Every movement exuded in strange elegance. Such grace could not be faked or learned overnight. The chamber of Dowager Duchess Eleanor Vance lay on the second floor, filled with candlelight and the heavy scent of herbal medicine. She lay on a large red velvet armchair, her face lined with age and habitual severity. Her sharp eyes swept over Clara the moment she crossed the threshold. Another poor girl from London coming here to earn a few pounds of pin money? Eleanor spoke, her voice raspy yet carrying the full authority of a lady who had once ruled London's high society. She stared at Clara's elegant posture with clear distaste. She despised the pride of Mayfair ladies, which she deemed hypocritical. I despise those who pretend to be noble. There is no place in Blackwood Castle for fallen ladies or lazy creatures wishing to use their beauty to climb the social ladder. If you wish to be my companion, you must prove you have real worth, not just elegant walking. I have seen too many shallow girls who think their faces can carry them through life. Clara did not flinch before that coldness and indirect insult. She stepped closer, placing the tea tray on the small mahogany table beside her gently. Absolutely no sound was made, not a single drop of tea spilled from the porcelain cup. My lady, I am Clara Smith, she bowed, creating a perfect elegant angle. I have come to serve you. I assure you that my only goal is to perform my duties to the best of my abilities. I do not fear hard work. Eleanor let out a cold snort of skepticism. She picked up the teacup. Taking a small sip, her nostrils flared slightly as she smelled the pleasant lavender scent. Her stern expression relaxed for a brief split second, then quickly hardened again. The tea is not bad, but I need someone who can read, write letters, and endure the solitude of this castle. The Dowager Duchess waved her hand toward the small table in the corner, where parchment, ink, and a goose quill were prepared. Write a short letter declining Lady Danbury's invitation in London. Write it politely, but maintain a cold distance. I want to see your handwriting. Clara walked over, picking up the goose quill without hesitation. Handwriting was an art she had mastered since she was a child. Her handwriting glided across the parchment, graceful, decisive, and sharp. It was the most standard copperplate hand, which only refined ladies raised by top tutors could write. The Dowager Duchess picked up the paper, putting on her monocle and squinting at the lines. The handwriting is beautiful, very dignified, unlike the sloppy script of common servants, Eleanor said coldly, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. She disliked this girl for that suspicious perfection, yet her frail body craved someone who could serve her so well. Very well, you shall have a week's trial. If I see a single drop of tea on my gown, or one misspelled word, you will be dismissed immediately. Do not think that a pretty hand is enough to stay here. We have high standards. Thank you for your mercy, my lady. Clara bowed respectfully. That night, Clara was given a small room at the corner of the third-floor corridor. The room was simple, with a small bed, an old oak wardrobe, and a window facing the dark sea outside. Clara locked the door with the iron latch. She opened her valise, carefully taking out the small leather pouch hidden at the bottom. Inside was her father's will and the Audley family ring gleaming under the dim candle. She clenched the ring in her warm palm. She was temporarily safe from Arthur Audley's hunt. But she knew that Blackwood Castle did not just belong to a difficult old woman. It also belonged to the cold Duke, the feared head of the Vance family. The man Clara told herself she must avoid at all costs if she wanted to keep her secret safe. Chapter 2. Harp in the night. The Cornwall storm continued to rage on the fourth night after Clara arrived at Blackwood Castle. The night was late, and the entire castle was submerged in silence, save for the wind whistling through the ancient stone crevices and the waves crashing against the distant cliffs. Clara lay on her small bed, her eyes closed, but her mind could not rest. Nightmares of her angry uncle Arthur Audley and the thundering hooves of the Bow Street runners' horses kept appearing whenever she closed her eyes. She sat up, wrapping her thin wool cloak around herself, deciding to go down to the great hall on the ground floor to find a book to read, or simply to seek some warmth from the dying embers of the fireplace. Her steps glided silently down the cold stone stairs. In the vast great hall, darkness enveloped her, with only the faint moonlight shining through the high-arched window, casting a silver beam on the floor. In the middle of that beam of light stood a solitary ancient maple wood harp. It was a beautiful instrument with exquisite carvings along its column, but it seemed it had not been touched for a very long time. Clara walked closer, admiring the harp under the moonlight. She could not resist the instrument she had always loved. In her late father's estate, playing the harp had been her only consolation after her mother passed away. She gently sat down on the small stool, brushing her slender fingers over the strings. A clear, gentle sound arose, breaking the heavy silence of the blackwood night. Clara closed her eyes, letting her fingers move freely. She began to play a piece by Mozart, a complex and melancholy sonata. The notes rang out, rising and falling, carrying all her homesickness, the sheer terror of being a fugitive, and her fierce desire for freedom. The melody soared through the gray stone hall, creating a beautiful contrast with the storm howling outside. She played with her whole soul, forgetting the reality that she was merely a disguised companion named Clara Smith. Her fingers moved softly and skillfully over the vibrating strings. She had no idea that at the entrance of the great hall, a tall figure had been standing silently watching her. Tristan Vance, the Duke of Blackwood, had just returned from a weeks-long trip to London. He wore a long black cloak soaked with rain, his dark hair slightly disheveled and clinging to his forehead. His face was angular, cold, and majestic, as if carved from gray Cornwall granite. His ash-gray eyes carried the exhaustion and high vigilance of a man who had just undergone intense political struggles in the London Parliament. Tristan despised the hypocrisy of the London ton, where smiles masked daggers. He had returned to his castle for peace, but what welcomed him in the stormy night was this melancholy harp music. He stood still in the shadows, his sharp eyes fixed on the girl playing under the moonlight. The moonlight cast a silver glow over her, highlighting her long hair dripping over her shoulders and her perfect playing posture. Every gesture of her playing exuded the grace of someone trained from childhood. Her body leaned slightly, her shoulders relaxed, her hands moving gracefully over the strings without a single pause. Tristan narrowed his eyes with suspicion. Playing the harp was a luxury art, requiring the most expensive tutors that only noble families could afford. How did a poor companion get the chance to learn this luxury instrument and even reach such a masterly level? Suspicion rose in the Duke's heart. Could this girl be a spy sent to probe Blackwood Castle? He had seen too many spies disguised in Spain during his military campaigns, and his survival instincts immediately flared. He knew how dangerous a beautiful agent could be in a house of secrets. As the final note faded into the air, Clara let out a soft, melancholy sigh. Just then a deep, cold voice echoed from the shadows, a magnificent piece. But I do not recall Blackwood Castle hiring such a talented musician for the position of companion. Clara gasped. She stood up abruptly, her heart pounding wildly in her chest. She turned and saw Tristan stepping out of the darkness. He took off his hat and handed his wet cloak to a servant who had just run down the hall. His face was clear under the moonlight. It was a masculine, sharp but terrifying face, with a faint scar running along his left cheek. "Your Grace," Clara bowed, trying to suppress her rising panic. She forced her voice to remain calm. "Who are you?" Tristan approached. His steps were heavy and firm on the cold stone floor, creating an invisible pressure that enveloped Clara. "I am Clara Smith, the new companion to the Dowager Duchess," she answered, her eyes downcast to avoid his sharp gaze that felt as though it could pierce her soul. "Clara Smith," Tristan repeated the name with distinct mockery. "A very common name, but your harp skills are not common at all." He stopped right in front of her, close enough for Clara to smell the cold rain and the leather of his attire. A poor girl from London working as a companion to make a living, yet capable of playing a complex Mozart sonata on the harp with the grace of a high-born lady. Tristan reached out, gently tilting her chin up. His fingers were cold yet commanding. Clara was forced to look into his deep, cold gray eyes. He inspected her hands, though she tried to hide them. He recognized that her hands were slender and soft, without the calluses of a laborer. "Tell me, Miss Smith, who taught you to play? Did the opposition in London send you here to spy on me? Or do you seek to gain something else from my household? Speak the truth, for I have little patience for games." Clara tried to take a deep breath to steady herself. She knew the slightest slip would have her thrown out into the storm. "My father was a poor music tutor, Your Grace. He taught me everything he knew before he passed away." She lied, her voice sad yet firm. I assure you, I have no interest in your politics, nor do I serve anyone in London. Tristan narrowed his eyes. He stared into her emerald eyes. He saw the hidden fear, but also a strange self-respect and resolve. This girl did not kneel or cry begging for mercy like other servants when facing his suspicion. Tristan slowly released her chin. Blackwood Castle does not tolerate liars, Miss Smith. If I find you have another purpose in approaching my mother, you will wish you had never set foot here. We are not fools in this house, and we protect what is ours. I only wish to perform my duty and care for the Duchess, your grace. Clara bowed. Very well, remember my words. Tristan turned and walked away, his tall figure vanishing into the dark corridor leading to his quarters. Clara stood frozen, breathing a sigh of relief, her legs shaking so much she nearly collapsed onto the cold stone floor. The cold Duke had already begun to suspect her presence. Chapter 3. The saving letter. Tristan's suspicion of Clara grew by the day, while the relationship between Clara and Dowager Duchess Eleanor remained highly strained. Eleanor constantly made things difficult for Clara, keeping her working non-stop, accusing her of having a hidden, prideful past and uttering cold sarcasm. Yet Clara endured in silence, caring for her details. Eleanor's dependency on Clara began to form when no one else could brew her tea to taste or write letters with such precision. By the second week, a major crisis suddenly hit Blackwood Castle. A letter arrived from London by express carriage. The sender was the Marquise de Valois, a powerful and scheming French noblewoman with immense influence in London's high society. During the war, she had been a salon hostess in Paris, rumored to have ties to various intelligence networks. The letter, written in French, contained anonymous threats targeted at the Blackwood family. The Marquise claimed she held secret documents from the Napoleonic War era, accusing the late Duke of Blackwood of treason and selling military intelligence to the French. If these documents were made public right before the upcoming London season, the honor of the Blackwood family would completely collapse. They would be banished from high society, stripped of all political influence, and face the social ruin of the entire nobility. The illustrious Blackwood name would be wiped off the social map overnight. Dowager Duchess Eleanor read the letter and immediately collapsed into her armchair. Her face turned gray, her hands shaking so violently she could not hold the quill. She wanted to write a reply to deny and negotiate, but in her state of panic and illness, she could not write a single proper line. Any weakness or slip in the response would be weaponized by the Marquise de Valois to attack them even more ruthlessly. The Blackwood family, our honor will be ruined, Eleanor whispered, tears welling in eyes. She looked helplessly at the blank parchment on the table. Her frail body and shattered spirit made her powerless against the storm descending from London. Seeing the pain of the woman who had sheltered her, Clara could not stand by. She stepped closer to the wooden table, picking up the goose quill. Tufunyan haidetoi zup ba swant buktunai Clara noi zopnoi diem thing laki. Eleanor nguknin Clara vivekin miat luntwit vomp. Jalating fap white zao, de lavende zangzuk wakamot zathok, mutko hogai nuko bitkizi mazub, sinhai tintoi tufunyan. Chimotlan naitoi, Clara kunkwan. Before the resolve in Clara's emerald eyes, Eleanor could only nod helplessly. Clara set quill to parchment. She did not use ordinary French. She utilized the most standard and sharp Versailles diplomatic French. Every sentence written was highly respectful yet carried razor-sharp warnings. Clara tactfully reminded the Marquise de Valois of her own financial debts at English banks and the existence of certain sensitive love letters of the Marquise to a general that had been leaked. The letter asserted that if the Marquise dared to smear Blackwood's honor, all of her own secrets would be exposed to the London Ton immediately. Clara's copperplate hand glided swiftly, flawless and sharp. When she completed and read it aloud to Eleanor, the Dowager Duchess was completely stunned. The disdain in her eyes vanished, replaced by utter astonishment. This letter did not just save Blackwood's honor. It turned the tables, forcing the opponent to retreat in silence. How did you write this? Eleanor stammered, looking at Clara as if she were a completely different person. Just then, Tristan entered the study. He saw the tense atmosphere and picked up the draft letter from the table. As his gray eyes swept over those lines of top-tier diplomatic French, he froze. His face darkened. The letter was indeed a diplomatic masterpiece that saved his family from a destructive scandal. But at the same time, it confirmed his greatest suspicion. Clara Smith, Tristan growled, throwing the letter onto the table and stepping close to Victoria, pinning her against the bookshelf. How do you explain this Versailles French? This is the language of ambassadors, of the highest diplomats at Versailles. A poor girl from London could never write such subtle diplomatic threats. Tristan's gray eyes bored into her face, filled with suspicion and danger. He was convinced she was a professional spy trained to infiltrate Blackwood Castle. Answer me, who sent you? Did you write this letter to trap my family? Victoria felt Tristan's hot breath close to her face. She trembled with fear but kept her back straight. I am no spy, Your Grace. I learned it from a poor French émigré who lived next door to me before. I only wished to save my lady's honor. If I were a spy, I would not have helped you. I would have let your name be ruined. Tristan cut in with a cold laugh, a beautiful lie. But from today I will watch you even closer. You are not allowed out of my sight. One wrong step, and you will find out how ruthless I can be when my family is threatened. Confrontation at dinner. The dining room of Blackwood Castle was filled with a cold silence, save for the howling wind from Cornwall Bay rattling the high glass windows. The vast room with rough grey stone walls was hung with old portraits of past generations of the Vance family. In the center, a long mahogany table polished to a shine was set for only 3 people at the ends. Duke Tristan Vance sat at the head of the table while his mother, Lady Eleanor, sat opposite. Clara Smith sat slightly to the side next to Eleanor, maintaining the proper distance of a companion. The candlelight from the large silver candelabra cast yellow shadows dancing on Tristan's angular face. The letter to the Marquise de Valois has been dispatched, Tristan Lysander Vance suddenly spoke, his deep voice echoing through the dining room. He placed his glass down, directing his cold gaze toward Clara. And as expected, she has immediately withdrawn all baseless accusations. Blackwood's honor is temporarily preserved. Miss Smith has indeed performed a great service. Clara bowed her head, keeping her voice calm. I only did what I could to assist the Duchess. But I still wonder. Tristan Lysander Vance tilted his head, his finger tapping the glass. Why would someone with such exquisite letter-writing skills and harp-playing accept working as a poor companion in Cornwall? Is it because London is no longer safe for you? The capital has a way of rejecting those who do not play by its rules. A lady who falls from grace is quickly forgotten, unless she has a powerful ally who can protect her. Clara clenched her gown under the table. She felt her blood run cold. Tristan was setting a trap to force her identity. London is a magnificent place, Your Grace. Clara looked up, meeting his eyes. But it is also a place filled with toxic rumors. For someone without a family estate like me, the peace here is a great blessing. I have no desire for the vanity of the city. I prefer the quiet of the country. Tristan Hetchmep, his smile carrying cold mockery, a peaceful life. Then you will surely be interested in this news. Lord Arthur Audley is hiring Bow Street runners to scour the country for his missing niece, Victoria Audley. They say she stole family heirlooms and fled. A lady with a ruined reputation like that will be permanently denied vouchers to Almack's. She will be cast out of polite society, treated as if she never existed, and her name will be dragged through the mud. Hearing her uncle's cruel slander, Clara felt a surge of anger in her chest. She straightened her back, her eyes proud. The truth is often far from what people rumor. Your Grace, perhaps that lady did not steal. Perhaps she is only fleeing a forced marriage to a violent man to protect her dignity. The high society at Almack's easily believes lies without verification. They care more for appearance than truth, and they are quick to condemn those who cannot defend themselves against powerful men. Tristan silently watched Clara's reaction. Her detailed knowledge of the Audley family scandal betrayed her. He knew for certain she was Victoria Audley. He Tristan dink dipduk tum vun, Dowager Duchess Eleanor, Bonyan dup might chik thea bak swung ban un. Kat dit bo hung ki kung thung. Banin con chiming vivazan zu duzoi Tristan. Kondang tum vun bent dom hein guadan yumot fap nyandea. Clara de kuzang zuk wazatok Blackwood bung buk tukwana. New hung kana, chumtada bi sahoy tung lu London drung borzoi. Ta tuk su fu tuok va su tum tai kwa kanbe, ta gum kan ngingo kanbe voko. Let her enjoy her dinner in peace. She has earned her place here, and she is my companion. Tristan was slightly astonished by his mother's protection. He looked at Eleanor, then at Clara. His mother's dependency on Clara was clear. He raised his glass, tilting his head slightly. My apologies, Mother. Perhaps I went too far. I wish you both a pleasant dinner. Clara breathed a sigh of relief, but she knew this game of hide-and-seek had entered a more dangerous phase. The cold Duke had seen beneath her mask. Chapter 5. The uncle's search warrant the next morning. The weak winter dawn of Cornwall could not pierce the thick fog enveloping Blackwood Castle. In his private study in the West Tower, Duke Tristan Vance stood by the large window, gazing thoughtfully at the grey sea below the cliffs. The room was warm from the fireplace, but the Duke's mind was as cold as the frost outside the bay. A deep knock sounded. Harrison the butler entered, carrying a silver tray with letters just arrived from London. "Your Grace," Harrison said respectfully, "an urgent letter from your private solicitor in London." Tristan turned, taking the envelope. Inside was a report from his family solicitor, along with a large printed sheet folded in four. When Tristan opened the paper, his grey eyes narrowed. It was a search warrant issued in London, bearing the red seal of the court and distributed by the Bow Street runners. Wanted Victoria Audley, reward of £500. The warrant described in detail: the only daughter of the late Earl of Audley, disappeared from the mansion in Mayfair. Accused of severe delusion, having stolen family heirlooms and jewelry before fleeing. Anyone harboring her would be charged as an accomplice under the law. Right in the center of the warrant was an exquisite hand-drawn portrait. Although the person in the painting wore the lavish attire of London's high society, Tristan did not need a second to recognize this face. It was Clara Smith, the girl working as a companion to his mother on the second floor of the castle. Tristan stared at the portrait. He recalled the stormy night when she appeared at the castle gates, soaked and exhausted yet keeping her back straight, refusing the servants' pity. He recalled the harp music ringing out in the dead of night, her sharp French handwriting, and her stubborn resolve during dinner yesterday. "Nàng không phải là một kẻ điên, càng không phải là kẻ trộm. Nàng chỉ là một cô gái tội nghiệp bị dồn vào chân đường, đang dùng chút sức lực cuối cùng để bảo vệ phẩm giá của mình trước người chủ ruột độc ác." Một cơn giận dữ lạnh lùng day lên trong lòng Tristan. Qua báo cáo kèm theo của luật sư Garrow, Lord Arthur Audley hiện đang nợ nần chồng chất tại các câu lạc bộ quý tộc ở St. James's, New Whites và Brookses, với số tiền nợ lên tới hơn 10.000 bảng. Gã đang đứng trước nguy cơ bị thông vào ngục con nợ, nếu không thể tìm ra nguồn tài chính khẩn cấp, và việc ép gã cháu gái mình cho một gã quá phụ giàu có tàn bạo con đường cứu cánh duy nhất của gã. Tristan bước đến bên lò sưởi lên bằng đá cẩm thạch nơi ngọn lửa đang cháy bập bùng. Không một chút do dự, anh đưa theo lệnh truy tìm vào giữa ngọn lửa. Anh lặng lẽ nhìn theo dây đá bắt đầu khăng lại, bên lửa và bùng cháy dữ dội. Bước chân dung của Victoria Audley, những dòng chữ cáo buộc đàn nhận và con số 500 bảng tiền thưởng nhanh chóng hóa thành những mảnh trâu đen tàn lụi, bị luồng gió từ ống khói cuốn đi mất. Anh bước lại bàn làm việc, rung chuông gọi Kwanzaa Harrison trở lại. Khi Harrison bước vào, Tristan cất giọng ra lệnh lạnh lùng và đứt quát. "Harrison, từ hôm nay, ta muốn ông thắt chặt an ninh xung quanh toàn bộ trang viên Blackwood. Tăng cường canh gác ở cổng chính và các lối đi phụ dẫn lên vách đá. Tuyệt đối không cho phép bất kỳ người lạ nào bước vào khuôn viên lâu đài mà không có sự đồng ý trực tiếp của ta." Harrison hơi ngạc nhiên trước mệnh lệnh đột ngột này, nhưng ông nhanh chóng cúi đầu. "Vâng, thưa ngài công tước, liệu có mối đe dọa nào từ bên ngoài chăng? Có thể sẽ có một vài thám tử từ London hoặc người của gia tộc Audley lang vang quanh đây." Tristan nói, mắt anh nhìn ra biển rộng. "If they appear, expel them immediately. If they present any search warrants, tell them Blackwood Castle does not fall under the jurisdiction of any local court warrant without my signature." "Ông đã rõ chưa?" "Tôi đã rõ thưa ngài." Harrison trả lời, trong lòng thầm hiểu rằng ngài công tước đang muốn bảo vệ một ai đó trong lâu đài. Và người đó chỉ có thể là Clara Smith. After Harrison left, Tristan sat at his desk, anh cầm bút lên, viết một bức thư khẩn gửi cho luật sư riêng của mình tại London. Anh yêu cầu thu mua lại toàn bộ các khoản nợ của Lord Arthur Audley từ các chủ nợ của gã. Nếu Arthur muốn dùng pháp luật để săn đuổi cháu gái mình, Tristan sẽ dùng chính quyền lực tài chính để bẻ gãy gông cùm của gã ngay tại London. He would make sure Arthur could not move a single finger without his consent, ruining him financially as punishment. Chapter 6. The Cornwall storm. The snowstorm swept across the Cornwall coast more violently than any forecast. Colossal waves from the Atlantic crashed against the sheer cliffs below Blackwood Castle, throwing white foam dozens of meters high. The wind howled through the stone crevices, blowing snow blindly through the air, turning everything into a cold and blurry white. Inside the castle, Lady Eleanor suddenly fell gravely ill. Her chronic asthma flared up due to the cold, damp sea air. She struggled for every breath, her face pale and burning with fever. Harrison searched the family medicine cabinet but found that the special herb of wild chamomile and dried licorice root, the only thing that could soothe the Duchess's chest spasms, was completely exhausted. This herb could only be found at the cottage of Mrs. Gable, an old herbalist living in a small hut near the cliffs 2 miles away. "Let me go get it," Clara offered immediately upon seeing Eleanor's critical condition. She took the cold hand of the Duchess. "I know the shortcut through the rocky bay. I will return before the snow covers the path, but it is dangerous out there, Miss Smith." Harrison hesitated. "The wind is too strong, the coastal path is very slippery." "Dokate Lamdok Harrison. Chúng ta không thể đợi bác sĩ từ thị trấn đến trong thời tiết này. Clara đứt quạt, nàng quấn chiếc khăn choàng lên mong quanh đầu và cổ, rồi nhanh chóng bước ra ngoài trước khi quan gia kịp ngăn cản. However, Clara had underestimated the cruelty of the Cornwall winter. Vừa bước ra khỏi cổng lâu đài, luồng gió buốt ra như hàng ngàn mũi kim châm thẳng vào mặt nàng. Tuyết rơi dày đặc làm tầm nhìn của nàng bị giới hạn trong vòng vài mét. Nàng cố bám theo con đường mòn quen thuộc ven vách đá, một bên là bức tường đá lạnh lẽo, một bên là vực sâu hun hút về tiếng sóng biển gào ru điên cuồng bên dưới. Cơ thể nàng run rẩy đôi ong mong trượt liên tục trên lớp đất đá đóng băng. Clara đến được lều của bà Gable và lấy được gói thuốc thảo dược. Nhưng trên đường quay trở về lâu đài, cơn bão đột ngột trở nên dữ dội hơn. Một trận gió giật mạnh suýt nữa thổi bay nàng xuống vực. Clara trượt chân trên một thang băng chân, ngã nhào xuống lối đi hẹp. Một cơn đau nhói truyền từ mắt cả chân lên khiến nàng nghẹn lời. Khi nàng cố gắng đứng dậy, một mảng đá phía trước bất ngờ đổ sập xuống vực, cắt đứt con đường quay lại lâu đài. Nàng bị kẹt trên một gờ đá hẹp nhô ra ngoài vách núi, xung quanh chỉ có tuyết trắng gào ru và sóng biển gầm vang. Nhiệt độ giảm xuống nhanh chóng, cơ thể Clara bắt đầu run rẩy dữ dội, các ngón tay nàng tê dại không còn cảm giác. Trong cơn lạnh buốt thấu xương, sự sợ hãi bắt đầu xâm chiếm tâm trí nàng. Liệu nàng có phải chết ở đây trên vách đá hoang vu này, dưới một danh phận ra mà không ai hay biết? Cùng lúc đó, tại lâu đài Blackwood, Tristan Vance vừa trở về sau khi kiểm tra các chuồng ngựa phía sau. Khi bước vào sảnh chính, anh nhìn thấy quan gia Harrison đang đứng lâu ở bên cửa. Có chuyện gì vậy, Harrison? Tristan cười chích găng một tay đã, nhận thấy bầu không khí bất thường. Thưa ngài, phu nhân Eleanor đổ bệnh nặng, và cô Smith, cô ấy đã tự mình đi lấy thuốc thảo dược ở nhà bà Gable từ 1 giờ trước. Cơn bão ngoài kia đang qua mạnh thôi là cái gì? Tristan quát lên, đôi mắt Sam của anh bừng lên ngọn lửa giận dữ và lo sợ tột cùng. Harrison, ông điên rồi sao? Để một cô gái ra ngoài trong cơn bão đại tây dương thế này? If anything happens to her, I will hold you responsible. Không đợi Harrison giải thích, Tristan lập tức giật lấy chiếc áo choàng len nặng nề từ tay gia nhân. Anh chạy nhanh ra chuồng ngựa, nhảy lên lưng Titan, chú hắc mã mạnh mẽ nhất của mình, và lao vụt vào màn đêm bão tuyết. Tristan phi ngựa điên cuồng đọc theo con đường ven vách đá. Joe tuyết quẹt mạnh vào mặt anh, nhưng anh bỏ qua mọi đau đớn. Tâm trí anh lúc này chỉ ngập tràn hình ảnh đôi mắt xanh lục bao kiêu hãnh của Clara. Anh không thể để nàng chết, anh đã thầm lặng bảo vệ nàng khỏi người chú độc ác, và anh sẽ không để cơn bão Cornwall cướp nàng đi trước mặt mình. Một cảm giác sợ hãi bóp nghẹt lồng ngực anh. Khi đến gần đoạn đường sạt lở, Tristan phát hiện chú hắc mã của mình chùn bước. Anh nhảy xuống ngựa, cầm theo chiếc đèn lồng dầu bão và đi bộ bám sát vách đá. Dưới ánh sáng mập mờ của ngọn đèn, anh nhìn thấy một góc chiếc khăn choàng len màu xám của Clara nhô ra sau một tảng đá lớn dưới gờ đá sạt lở. Clara, Tristan hét lên, gió mạnh bị tiếng gió bão nuốt chửng. Anh bấu xuống gờ đá trơn trượt, bất chấp hiểm nguy cận kề. Nghe thấy tiếng gọi, Clara Camel đôi mắt đã tru nặng vì lạnh. Qua làn tuyết trắng xóa, nàng nhìn thấy một bóng dáng cao lớn đang treo xuống phía mình. Đó là Tristan, vị công tước lạnh lùng, đã nhận đang liều mạng sống của mình trên vách đá dựng đứng chỉ để tìm nàng. Thưa ngài, Clara theo thào, giọng nàng yếu ớt. Tristan tiếp cận được Clara, nhìn thấy gương mặt tái nhợt không còn giọt máu và cơ thể đang run lên bần bật của nàng. Tim anh thắt lại vì đau xót. Không nói một lời, anh lập tức cởi chiếc áo choàng len nặng ấm áp của mình ra và quấn chặt lấy nàng. Anh nhấc băng nàng lên bằng đôi tay mạnh mẽ của mình, kéo nàng vào sát lồng ngực ấm áp của anh. Tôi ở đây rồi Clara. Tristan thì thầm sát tai nàng, giọng anh chứa đầy sự kiềm chế cảm xúc nhưng vô cùng kiên định. Đừng nhắm mắt nhìn tôi này, tôi sẽ đưa cô về nhà. Clara tựa đầu vào ngực anh, cảm nhận được hơi ấm và nhịp tim đập mạnh mẽ, vững chãi của Tristan. Sự lạnh giá bấy lâu nay trong lòng nàng dường như tan chảy trước hành động bao bọc ấm áp của người đơn độc này. Nàng khẽ gật đầu siết nhẹ lấy vạt áo của anh, trao trọn niềm tin cho vị công tước mà nàng từng cảnh giác. Siêu ưng sắc sạc gần cầm bóng tuyết mùa đông vùng Cornwall cuồng lạnh gào ru bên ngoài lâu đài Blackwood hoang sơ, quật những vệt gió buốt lạnh và lớp kính vòm dày của thư phòng. Nhưng bên trong thư phòng riêng của ngài công tước, bầu không khí lại đối lập hoàn toàn. Ngọn lửa trong sân lò sưởi bằng đá cầm thạch đen cháy bập bùng, tỏa ra hơi ấm dịu nhẹ cùng thứ ánh sáng cam vàng ấm áp. Tristan Vance nên anh đặt Victoria xuống chiếc ghế dài bọc nhung sậm màu đặt cạnh lò sưởi. Nàng khẽ run rẩy cả người ướt sũng nước mưa và tuyết lạnh. Nhưng lọn tóc hạt đè đón chặt vào gò má tái nhợt vì lạnh, trong khi đôi môi mím chặt để ngăn những tiếng răng và vào nhau cầm cập. Tôi có thể tự lo được thưa ngài công tước, Victoria khẽ nói, giọng nàng run rẩy nhưng vẫn cố giữ lấy sự kiêu hãnh của một tiểu thư. Nàng khâu chân lại, cố gắng kéo gấu vai len ướt đẫm để che đi chiếc cổ chân đang sưng tấy đỏ bầm của mình. Tristan không đáp, anh đứng thẳng người, chậm rãi cởi bỏ chiếc áo choàng cưỡi ngựa nặng nề bám đầy tuyết lạnh, Và nam nó lên chiếc ghế bành gần đó. Anh bước đến, quy the gort gối xuống chiếc thảm bát đặt ra ngay trước mặt nàng. Hành động đó khiến hơi thở của Victoria nghẹn lại nơi cổ họng. Một vị công tước tôn quý của nước Anh giờ đây lại đang quỳ gối trước một cô bạn đồng hành thấp kém. Thưa ngài, xin ngài đừng làm thế, việc này không đúng với thân phận của tôi và ngài. Im lặng Clara Smith, Tristan cất giọng trầm thấp, lạnh lùng, nhưng chứa đựng một mệnh lệnh thép không thể chối từ. Anh đưa tay ra những ngón tay to lớn và vững chãi khóa chặt lấy mắt cá chân mảnh mai của nàng. Nếu cô còn muốn giữ lấy bàn chân này để tiếp tục phục vụ mẹ tôi, tốt nhất là hãy ngồi yên. Bàn tay anh rett to lòng bàn tay nóng và có những vết chai sân truyền hơi qua lập vai tật ợt sông. Khiến Victoria kê giật mình vì cảm giác áp lan thua dây chịu. Tristan nhẹ nhàng nhưng dứt khoát dùng một con dao nhỏ bằng bạc cắt bỏ lập tật ợt sông đã rách nát. Lan đã trăng ngân lộ ra dưới anh lừa lò sưởi, tương phản hoàn toàn với vết sưng tây đỏ bầm ở mặt cá chân. Nàng khẽ rung mình khi ngón toe rap của anh chạm vào mặt cá chân nhạy cảm. Tristan nhìn vết thương chân mày anh khen nhíu lại. Cô quả thật là một kẻ ngốc nghếch. Tristan nói, giọng anh châm xuống, ngón tay cái bắt đầu xoa nhẹ xung quanh vết sưng để phân tán cơn đau trước khi nắn lại khớp. Chỉ có một kẻ mặt chi mới tự mình lao ra ngoài vách đá giữa cơn bão tuyết chỉ để hai vai nhanh thao dược. Đó là bổn phận của tôi. Victoria cắn chặt môi, cô ngăn một tiếng rên rỉ khi ngón tay anh chạm vào chỗ đau nhất. Công tước phu nhân đang lên cơn hen suyễn nặng, tôi không thể đứng nhìn một người đang đau đớn mà không làm gì. Bổn phận của cô không bao gồm việc tự sát. Tristan ngước mặt nhìn nàng. And you are no ordinary servant, Clara. Do not pretend you are used to hardship. His words made Victoria's heart race. She feared he had discovered she was Victoria Audley, fleeing her uncle's forced marriage. I am only the daughter of a poor scholar, Victoria stammered. Tristan hetchmep. He took a herbal ointment, applying a thin layer onto his palms and pressing it to her foot. The scent of eucalyptus and pine arose. He began to apply steady pressure to reset the joint. Victoria winced, clenching her hands to avoid crying out. Her face was white, but she did not beg or weep. Tristan watched her. Her silent endurance made his chest tighten with a strange ache. Cry if it hurts, Tristan said softly, his touch growing gentler. There is no one here but me. You do not need to be strong before me. I will protect you from the world. Weeping does not stop the storm, Your Grace, Victoria whispered. But it helps ease the pain in your heart, Tristan said, his eyes locking onto hers. Sometimes, seeking help is not weakness. Especially when someone is willing to protect you. You do not have to carry everything alone. I will be your shield if you let me. You have suffered enough. Bầu không khí trong phòng trở nên đặc quánh. Victoria cảm nhận được một luồng điện chạy dọc sống lưng. Nàng nhìn thấy trong mắt vị công tước này một sự ấm áp và bảo hộ mà nàng chưa từng nhận được từ bất kỳ ai. Tôi chỉ là một người bạn đồng hành, Victoria khẽ nói. Sự che chở của ngài là thứ tôi không thể gánh vác nổi. Tôi sẽ quyết định thứ gì cô có thể gánh vác. Tristan Lysander Vance said coldly, but his eyes were resolute. He poured a cup of hot tea from the silver pot, placing it in her hands. Drink, and from tomorrow you are not permitted to leave Blackwood Castle without my consent. This is not a request, Clara, it is a command. You belong under my protection now, and I will not let you wander into danger again. Your safety is my concern. Dowager Duchess Eleanor stood outside, watching through the cracked door. She saw her son's deep worry and Clara's devotion. Her initial dislike completely faded. She realized this girl was no gold digger but possessed a brave, proud, and sincere heart. From that day on, Eleanor trusted Clara completely, depending entirely on her care and companionship. She felt she could not do without Clara by her side. Chapter 8, Bow Street at the door. The next morning the snowstorm finally cleared, leaving a clear but freezing sky. The cliffs in Blackwood Castle were covered in a blanket of glittering white under the early sun. The snow lay heavy on the pines and rocks, creating a magnificent yet desolate view. Victoria looked in the old bronze mirror, adjusting the white lace collar of her simple green wool dress. Her ankle was much better thanks to the Duke's care the night before. Nàng nhanh chóng đi đến phòng sinh hoạt chung của Dowager Duchess để thực hiện bổn phận của mình. Dowager Duchess Eleanor was sitting by the window, holding a warm teacup. Seeing Victoria enter with a slight limp, the Duchess sighed, but her eyes softened. Sit down, Clara, Eleanor said, pushing a warm cashmere shawl toward her. Do not force that injured foot to work. From today you only need to sit by my side and read to me. I do not wish to see you straining yourself. You have proven your loyalty to this family. And you belong here. We protect our own. Cảm ơn sự nhân từ của phu nhân. Victoria khẽ cúi đầu chào, lòng nàng dấy lên một nỗi ấm áp kỳ lạ. Sự thấu hiểu và che chở âm thầm của Dowager Duchess khiến nàng cảm thấy lâu đài này như một mái ấm thực sự. Đúng lúc đó Tristan Vance bước vào phòng anh diện bộ đồ cưỡi ngựa màu đen lệch lam. Anh ke kui do chao mẹ mình rồi liếc nhìn cô chân của Victoria. Ánh mắt anh dừng lại ở đó một giây, như để kiểm tra xem nàng có tuân thủ mệnh lệnh nghỉ ngơi của mình hay không. Mẹ có khỏe hơn sau khi dùng trà thảo dược đôi qua không? Tristan hỏi. Khá hơn nhiều, Eleanor đáp. Clara đã liều mạng vì đông thảo dược đó con nên khen thương cô ấy cho xứng đáng. Tristan knitch môi, ánh mắt Sam của anh khóa chặt lấy Victoria. Ta đã khen thương cô ấy theo cách của riêng ta. Victoria cúi mặt xuống để tránh cái nhìn thiêu đốt của anh. Gò má nàng khẽ ửng hồng, nhưng sự yên bình ngắn ngủi đó lập tức bị phá vỡ. Cánh cửa gỗ nặng nề của phòng sinh hoạt bị đẩy mạnh ra. When Harrison bước vào, mắt ông tai mẹ Veloso hơi thở đồn đập. Thưa ngài công tước phu nhân, Harrison lắp bắp nói. Cô người từ London đến. Họ đã vượt qua công lâu đài và đang đòi vào sanh lern. Ai đem cả gan xông vào Blackwood Castle mà không được mời. Tristan hỏi giọng on lạnh đi vài phần. Là Lord Arthur Audley thưa ngài, Harrison nói, mắt ông lô lăng liếc về phía Victoria. Ông ta đi cùng với hai tham tu Bow Street Runners từ London. Ông ta khẳng định rằng một kẻ trốn na đang ẩn náu tại lâu đài dưới danh nghĩa bạn đồng hành, và ông ta có lệnh khám xét chính thức từ tòa án. Cái tên Arthur Audley nhiều lưỡi dao bong đâm thẳng vào team Victoria. Toàn thân nàng đông cứng lại, gương mặt nàng lập tức cắt không còn một giọt máu, đôi mắt lục bào giãn ra vì nỗi sợ hãi tột cùng. Người trừ tàn bạo cuối cùng đã tìm đến đây, nàng nhìn quanh căn phòng như một con thú nhỏ bị dồn vào chân tường. Không lối thoát. Tristan Vance tiến lại gần nàng, cất giọng trầm âm nhưng vô cùng vững chãi. Hãy ở lại đây với mẹ tôi. No one can touch you in Blackwood if I do not allow it. I will handle this, once and for all, trust me, thưa ngài, Victoria nghẹn ngào, nước mắt trực trào ra trong đôi mắt đầy sợ hãi. Ông ta sẽ bắt tôi đi, tôi không muốn quay lại London. Tôi sợ hãi cuộc hôn nhân địa ngục đó. I would rather die than go with him. Cô sẽ không đi đâu cả. Tristan nhấn mạnh từng chữ. Ánh mắt anh kiên định như một lời thề. Anh quay sang quan gia Harrison. Mời họ vào sanh lern, ta sẽ trực tiếp đón tiếp, nói rồi. Tristan sai bước ra khỏi phòng. Victoria đứng đó, lồng ngực phập phồng vì sợ hãi. Nàng biết mình không thể trốn tránh mãi mãi. Quay sang nhìn Dowager Duchess, Victoria lấy hết condemn nói. Thưa phu nhân. Tôi phải xuống sanh lern. Tôi không thể để tai tiếng của mình làm ảnh hưởng đến danh dự của lâu đài Blackwood. Chun con đang đau. Eleanor gọi với Theo, nhưng Victoria đã khăn răng chịu đau, khập khiêng bước nàng Theo sau Tristan. Nàng muốn đối mặt với số phận của mình. Chapter 9. The Power Declaration in the Great Hall of Blackwood Castle. The tension was suffocating. Lord Arthur Audley stood in the center, wearing a costly but worn fur coat. His face was red from the cold wind and wine. Behind him were two Bow Street runners in black cloaks, holding iron cuffs and wooden clubs. Tristan Vance stood on the stone steps, looking down at the uninvited guests. Standing tall, he showed no unease. Duke of Blackwood, Arthur Audley spoke arrogantly, but with a slight tremor before Tristan's presence. He held up a red-sealed parchment. I have come to execute the law my niece, Victoria Audley, fled after stealing family property. We have information she is hiding here under the name Clara Smith as a companion. I demand you surrender the traitor immediately. Just then, Victoria limped into the hall. Seeing her, Arthur let out a cruel, triumphant grin. He pointed his finger at her, his voice venomous. There she is. The thief. Officers, arrest her. The two Bow Street runners stepped forward to cuff her. Victoria stood frozen, her breath caught, waiting for her doom. But before the officers could touch Victoria, a figure suddenly shielded her. It was Dowager Duchess Eleanor Vance. She was not in a wheelchair, nor did she need support. For the first time in years, the proud lady stood on her own feet, walking straight to block Victoria. Her sharp, noble gaze swept over the officers, forcing them back. She tapped her fan against her palm, her voice commanding and ringing through the hall. She is my companion. Anyone who touches her insults me. I will not allow you to lay a finger on her. Get out of my sight. The Duchess's commanding shout silenced the hall. The officers stood frozen, daring not take another step. Arthur Audley turned pale with anger. Lady Blackwood, you are harboring a fugitive. This is a legal warrant. A legal warrant? Tristan Vance slowly walked down the stone stairs. His tall figure and immense presence filled the room. Tristan took the warrant from Arthur, not looking at it for more than 2 seconds. With a casual yet ruthless gesture, Tristan tore the parchment in half, throwing the pieces into the fireplace. You, Arthur shook with shock. You destroyed a court warrant. Lord Audley, Tristan looked at him with deep disdain. Before you speak of the law, perhaps you should look at this. Tristan waved his hand. Harrison's solicitor Garrow stepped forward, handing Tristan a black leather file. Tristan opened it, flipping through the pages. Property contracts, mortgages taken out under the name of the late Earl of Audley, and 12 letters forged with Victoria Audley's signature to withdraw money from London banks. Tristan read in a cold tone. All gathered by my family solicitor Garrow Lord Audley. The total amount you embezzled from your niece's inheritance exceeds £40,000. That is a severe criminal offense. Arthur Audley trembled, his face turning grey. He stammered, "No, I am her legal guardian." "Your guardianship ended the moment you signed a contract selling her to pay your debts." Tristan closed the file. He looked at the Bow Street runners. "Do you wish to continue assisting a fraudster in stealing noble property? Or do you wish to leave this castle before I call the Constable of Cornwall to arrest you all?" The officers looked at each other, realizing the situation. They bowed to Tristan and quickly strode out, leaving Arthur Audley alone. Arthur realized he had completely lost. Despair drove him mad. He stared at Victoria with bloodshot eyes, suddenly lunging, "You ungrateful wretch. You must come with me. You carry the Audley blood, you belong to the Audley family." But before he could reach Victoria, Tristan stepped forward, blocking him. The Duke's broad shoulders shielded Victoria completely. Tristan grabbed Arthur's collar with terrifying force, pushing him back. His grey eyes looked down at Arthur, freezing him to the bone. Arthur screamed in frustration, "You have no right to keep her. Her name is Audley." Tristan Vance tilted his head, his voice deep, clear, and ringing through the great hall. "The name Audley has no meaning here. At Blackwood Castle, her only identity is my Duchess. She is mine now, and you will never touch her again. I will make sure you pay for everything you did." The room fell into absolute silence. Victoria stood behind him, her emerald eyes wide, looking at Tristan's broad back. Her heart raced with a strange warmth. This cold man was protecting her against the world. "Harrison," Tristan released Arthur's collar, "lock Lord Audley in the castle dungeon. Tomorrow, when the storm clears, hand him to the local sheriff to be escorted to London for trial." Ratuangai komtuk. Harrison vakazanyan khongche gatan chudangam het din kuang vakyaugadi sungtangham. When only 3 remained, Eleanor looked at Victoria, nodded gently, and left, leaving the room to her son and Victoria. Tristan turned to Victoria, his face softening. He stepped closer, offering his hand. "Palm up, Clara, or should I call you Victoria?" Tristan asked, his voice incredibly gentle. Victoria looked at his hand, then up into his grey eyes reflecting the warm firelight. She placed her small hand in his. "Call me Victoria, my lord." She smiled, her eyes filled with tears but resolute. Chapter 10. Glory at Almack's. The London season that year was more brilliant and bustling than ever. After the grey winter days, London welcomed the nobility with spring sunshine and blooming flowers. The hottest gossip was the arrest of Lord Arthur Audley for embezzlement. He was held at Newgate waiting for trial, yet the ton talked most about Lady Victoria Audley. Whispers and mockery occurred everywhere. They looked down on her having worked as a companion, calling it a shame to her noble blood. Before the important ball at Almack's Assembly Rooms, inside the drawing room of the Blackwood townhouse in London, Victoria stood before the mirror. She wore her exquisite emerald silk gown, but her neck was bare. She sighed, feeling anxious about the judgment of high society tonight. She did not want Tristan's honor affected by the gossip about her past. A knock sounded, and Eleanor entered. In her hands was an old red velvet box bearing the Blackwood crest. She walked to Victoria, opening the box. Inside was the heirloom emerald necklace of the Blackwood family, a priceless piece worn only by the Duchess. The magnificent emeralds reflected the candlelight. "I once disliked you, Victoria," Eleanor said, her voice soft but sincere. She lifted the necklace, gently fastening it around Victoria's neck. "I thought you were like the vain girls of Mayfair, who care only for titles and fortune. But you proved you have a brave heart and dignity. Your letter saved our family honor. And your trek through the snow for my herbs proved you deserve to be the Duchess of Blackwood more than anyone. This is my acceptance of you. Wear it with the pride of a Blackwood Duchess. You have earned it. And no one can take that from you." Victoria felt the cool emeralds against her skin, but her heart was warm. She looked at Eleanor, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Mother. Your acceptance is my greatest gift tonight. I promise I will never disappoint you or this family. I will bear the Blackwood name with pride and honor." Eleanor smiled gently, patting her hand. "Now go out there and show the London ton the true spirit of a Blackwood Duchess. Let them see what real dignity is. They will not dare whisper again, and they will bow to you." The doors of Almack's opened, the great hall sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Lady Jersey was talking with other patronesses. All eyes turned to the door as the crier announced, "Duke Tristan Vance of Blackwood," and Lady Victoria Vance, Duchess of Blackwood. The ballroom fell into absolute silence. All eyes fixed on the couple, the ton stood stunned by Victoria's regal beauty. Tristan entered standing tall, his suit tailored to perfection. Beside him, Victoria was stunning. Her silk gown embraced her figure, and the emerald necklace around her neck declared her supreme status. Tristan dot her through the crowd which parted to make way. They stopped before Lady Jersey. Tristan bowed, handing Lady Jersey the marriage settlement signed by the Lord Chancellor, transferring vast estates to Victoria. Lady Jersey looked at the emerald necklace, then into Victoria's eyes. She saw the dignity and courage. The powerful patroness slowly dipped into a deep court curtsy. "Welcome back to London, Her Grace. It is my honor to present you both with vouchers to Almack's. I am certain you will grace our gatherings with distinction. You are a credit to your house, and we are proud to have you." Immediately the entire assembly bowed and curtsied to Victoria. Those who had mocked her now bowed in respect. The status reversal was complete. Tristan looked at Victoria, his gray eyes filled with pride and love. "Will you dance the first waltz with me, Victoria?" Victoria smiled, placing her hand in his. "It is my honor, my Duke. Let us show them our world. We have nothing to fear now, and our future is ours." They stepped onto the floor as the waltz began. Tristan spun her to the music. All her pain and flight had ended, replaced by glory and true love beside the man who had used his world to protect her. As the violin notes floated high into the vaulted ceiling of Almack's, she knew she had finally found home. The shadows of Cornwall's cliffs and the cold, wind-swept towers of Blackwood Castle were no longer a refuge of fear, but a fortress of their shared devotion, standing unshakable against the tides of time.